There's a chance I just made all of that up. But she wrote the flight attendant. No, I always say the flight attendant. So if you guys have been following me in no particular order, the no particular order should be the thing that surprises nobody. It's been a day, you guys. I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I swear I do. You guys are probably like, is she gonna say it? Wait for it. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. And welcome to what I feel like is finally a video of me talking about some podcasts that I've been listening to lately. So you guys have asked me a couple of times to do this video. I did one like a long time ago and fully planned to do it, but it just, took me a minute to get here. So finally, we're gonna talk about some podcasts that I've been listening to lately. So this is a mix of bookish and non-bookish podcasts. My attention goes in 1,000 different directions. I have talked about this before. I can very easily obsess on a topic and just try to do like all the research and consume all the content and do all the things about it. So my listening tends to vary the same way that sort of like my TV watching will tend to vary, but we're here to talk podcasts today, so that's what we're going to do. So I will say one of my favorite ways of discovering a new podcast is I will, like I said, obsess about a topic, an author, maybe a particular book, maybe a particular true crime, and I'll like punch that in and then find different podcasts. And this is how I've discovered some great ones lately. So the first one I want to talk about is Carter Wilson's Making It Up. So Carter Wilson wrote Mr. Tender's Girl, which I just read. But I had discovered the podcast before I read the book, but I had the book but didn't connect it to the podcast. So let's think about that for half a minute. But he interviews other authors. So if you guys have been following me, then you know that I am a writer, aspiring to be published, working on a book, and I'm always looking for some writing advice. And one of my favorite authors to give writing advice is J.T. Ellison. So I was feeling kind of slumpy in my writing. So I started to look up J.T. Ellison interviews, which led me to Carter Wilson's podcast. And she did not disappoint, and he's great. And there is definitely something about writers interviewing writers that brings a whole different level of conversation, and especially writers who are friends. And it was just such a great conversation. It feels like you're eavesdropping, which I love. And I devoured that. I will probably re-listen to it as much as I rewatch TV shows and will listen to a song on repeat. I will re-listen to podcasts, just reread books. I just like to do things over and over again, obviously. But he has so many great people on here, which I have not even begun to scratch the surface at. So he has about 50 episodes right now, but other ones I read. I listened to Alex Finley. So he and Alex Finley are actually friends as well. You get all sorts of background on Alex Finley, who wrote Every Last Fear and just wrote The Night Shift. But like a Riley Sager, he is another author who published books under his original name and then had a second coming under a pseudonym. So you get that whole like behind the scenes bit, which I thought was super interesting. But he also has Katie Latari, who wrote Dark Things I Adore, which I have but haven't read yet. It's right down here. He has Julie Clark on here. I'm just trying to highlight like some authors that in particular I'm gonna listen to. S.A. Cosby is on here. Go faster. Maureen Johnson, who wrote the Truly Devious series, he interviews. There's just so many incredible writers, and I am just so excited to have discovered this podcast. And then I don't mean to not look at you guys, but I'm just like scrolling down. Lynn Constantine, who is one half of the Liv Constantine co-writing sister duo, but she also has her own books. KJ Howe, who is one of the founders, I want to say, of Thriller Fest. Alex Marwood, who I am embarrassed to say I have a bunch of books from, you can't see them, they're out of shot, that I haven't read, but I've heard great things about. So if you guys love listening to writers talk about writing and their book and their inspiration, and then also talk about their craft and how they deal with social media and just sort of the whole business of writing, and then with the J.T. Ellison one in particular, they talked about writing during the pandemic and how it hurt or hindered or helped your creativity and dealing with Zoom meetings and not being able to do book launches in person, and how you promote a book when you can't physically be out promoting a book. So it's also a really interesting kind of inside baseball of publishing and writing, which I absolutely love. And like I said, he is completely entertaining. I found it before I read the book. Mr. Tender's Girl was great. I talked about it in my wrap-up video, but such a great one. So I am slowly making my way through that podcast. Another one I talked about recently in a different video is the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. So Jennifer Hillier was featured on that. So of course, I listened to it obsessively and then went down the rabbit hole of the Sisters in Crime podcast, which has been around for a while and I didn't even know. So they have, as of the filming of this video, 58 episodes that are up. So I am a brand new member of Sisters in Crime. I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? So I used to be in Mystery Writers of America. I did not do a really great job at all of networking or leveraging the opportunity. And I've heard so many great things about Sisters in Crime. It has sort of like been on my to-do list to join for a really long time, and I just haven't done it. So literally today did the transaction. So it's official. But there's so many great podcasts, so many great authors interviewed here. So they have former presidents of Sisters in Crime that are on here, just authors in general. And it is so fascinating. Again, I'm just trying to scroll through to see other ones I've listened to. Wanda Morris is on here, Rachel Housel Hall, Hallie Efron. And then I will tell you one of my favorites in half a minute because it just unleashed a whole different rabbit hole that I went down. Hank Phillippi Ryan is on here. Jess Lowry, Lori Rader Day, Vanessa Lilly, who is just another one who is just absolutely tremendous in writing advice, in support of the community, support of other writers. She is just absolutely interesting to listen to. Her writing journey, I find her just completely I could like gobble up everything Vanessa Lilly says. But the one that completely hooked me is PJ Vernon. And I absolutely loved his interview. He's so engaging, he's so interesting. And after I listened to him on Sisters in Crime, I went down like a PJ Vernon rabbit hole because I just needed to consume all the things. And again, it's so much behind the scenes, but you hear, particularly in sort of the premise of the Sisters in Crime podcast, is you get the author's origin story, how they got published, how they started writing, how they persevered. And Jennifer Hillier talked really honestly and openly about her struggles, her challenges, when she was ready to give up and like throw in the towel. And it was before she wrote Jar of Hearts, so she had written 4 books. And she was like, maybe that was my run. And I had a good run, I wrote 4 books, and maybe this is the end of my story. And I feel like you hear this a lot with a lot of authors, and they're like, well, maybe I'll just do one more and just throw everything I have into it. And we all know how the story ends. She wrote Jar of Hearts, favorite book ever. And then she's written 2 more since then and just has a really strong career and just really great books. But I think the transparency of the struggle of being a writer, the highs and lows, the community of it. And I think what really propelled me even more to want to sign up now is the community. And I don't remember which interview it was. It might have been Wanda Morris, but they were talking about how you don't feel necessarily like you're really a writer until you have the agent or until you have the deal or until you are published. And it can feel a little bit like, who am I to be joining like a writing community and a writing group and a writing, society. I was gonna say it's not a society. Not a society, but a writing organization. And who am I to be a part of this when I'm not published and I don't have an agent yet and I am still working on another book? And it just feels like I shouldn't have the audacity to join an organization that Hank Phillippi Ryan and Vanessa Lilly and Jennifer Hillier and PJ Vernon and all these amazing people are a part of, because who am I compared to them? And what I love about the conversation is they were saying is like, it is when you're starting out. It is when you don't know how things work. Like, that's the time to join. That's when you find your mentors. That's when you find your community. That's when you can learn from people who've been there and done that and help you navigate the way and give you the support and give you the community and not feeling so lonely. And it really shifted my perspective on it. And I just want to read the little blurb on the bottom. And this is like not a sponsored Sisters in Crime thing, but for anyone out there who's wondering or needed to hear what I needed to hear, because I needed to hear it. So Sisters in Crime was founded in 1986, just so you guys know, it's been around for a while. And it was founded to promote the ongoing advancement, recognition, and professional development of women crime writers. Through advocacy, programming, and leadership, Sisters in Crime empowers and supports all crime writers, regardless of genre or place on their career trajectory. And that to me was just such a pivotal thing. So no matter where you are, whether you are me or you are Hank Phillippi Ryan, there is a place for everyone within this community, and there's no better time to join than when you are on the beginning stages and learn from the masters. So that is my mission. And my mission is also to work my way through these amazing episodes, because there's just so much to learn and glean from these authors. And I just find it absolutely fascinating, and I love it to pieces, and I can't say enough about it. So another writerly one that I've been listening to is The Thriller Zone by David Temple. And this was the result of me looking up specific authors and getting directed to certain podcasts, and that's how I found him. So he has had May Cobb on here, who you guys know I loved The Hunting Wives, and I can't wait for my Summer Darlings. I just can't wait to read that. He has also had Wanda Morris. So she wrote All Her Little Secrets, and that's like been compared to The Firm. And it's like this woman shows up at work one morning, she's an attorney, and her boss, who she's having an affair with, is found dead, and she winds up leaving because she doesn't want to be connected with it because she's having an affair with the boss. And it's like a whole murder, mystery, extravaganza, legal thriller. So I have it. It's up high. I need to read it. But I very much enjoy her interviews. She has a great origin story. But speaking of this podcast, so we also, who else did I listen to? This is the one where I did the PJ Vernon deep dive, and I came across this one. So another super interesting PJ Vernon conversation, and he has obviously a lot of thriller writers, because that's the premise of this podcast, is the thriller zone. But it's just really interesting, and I just love the variety of writers that he has. He has Meg Gardner. She is another writer who gives tremendous writing advice. Lisa Gardner, also unrelated to Meg Gardner, but Lisa Gardner related, also gives incredible writing advice. So she's another one if you're looking to like glean some information or find some inspiration. Did I say glean some inspiration or find some inspiration? You want to get inspired, kind of feel like you're in a rut, looking for some pearls of wisdom to help you. Both of those ladies are tremendous, but Thriller Zone, also an incredibly great one. If you guys saw my video about podcasts, books and podcasts featuring books, I've been filming a lot today. I should be better at this by now. I talked about Virtual Book Tour, which is Book of the Month's new podcast that they just put out. So they have a handful of episodes. I see they just put up an interview with Julie Clark. So she wrote The Last Flight, and then her new book just came out, The Lies I Tell. So I'm very excited for this. So I will definitely be listening to that one. But that is a very new podcast. So they do live interviews in front of like a studio audience at the Book of the Month offices in New York, and you have like some audience interaction with that, but found that one very interesting. Same thing, kind of origin story, writing inspiration, talking about where they get their ideas from, talking about their books. So always great fun. Had to do a little battery change there, sorry. So another one which is great, and they are actually, so it's Poison Pen. They are a bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they have a podcast, and then they will also do the author interviews, the video on YouTube, so you can listen to them either way. So sometimes I will watch the video, sometimes I'll listen to the podcast. It just kind of depends on what I'm doing or how I'm feeling, because I'm even moody with my podcasts. But they have so many amazing authors and such interesting conversations. If you catch them live, obviously you can do the Q&A part as well, but you can also watch them in replay mode type of a thing. But you can also catch their live interviews. And then not a podcast, but Murder by the Book also will do live author interviews. So sometimes they will do them, I don't know if there's a consistent schedule, but if you just check out their page. I'll link it down below. They have a lot of incredible authors on there as well. And if you are particularly mystery thriller inclined, both of those, Poison Pen and Murder by the Book, are great ones for some deep diving on author stuff. But let me take a turn away from authors for just half a minute and talk about some other ones that I've been listening to. So another one that has both a YouTube video coverage and then also a podcast of it is Between the Lines with Kate. So I found this one during my Ashley Winstead deep dive after I read Fool Me Once and needed all the Ashley Winstead content that I could consume, till I finally broke down and reread In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. But I actually saw this on YouTube first, and then when I was looking up Ashley Winstead podcasts on Apple Podcasts, found it, and as soon as I started listening, I was like, this feels a little bit familiar. And then I was like, oh, I see what she's doing here. But she will go into deep spoilers, but will let you know it's deep spoilers. So I found that very fun to listen to the author and our podcaster Kate talk about spoilers in the book and like really get into it. So I haven't listened to a lot of these because I haven't read all the books and I don't want to be spoiled for books that I actually want to read, obviously. So if you don't care about that, you can listen to all of them, or you can sort of pick and choose like I am, and I will eventually get to more of them. But she has one with Wendy Walker. I very much enjoy Wendy Walker also from an author advice, inspiration, craft conversation. I've listened to a ton of interviews with her, but I haven't read Don't Look for Me yet, which is the book that's covered on this particular podcast. She also has Eliza Jane Brazier, who wrote Good Rich People, which I have but haven't read yet. Remember this theme of books Audrey has, had to have, haven't read it yet, have it, haven't read it yet? I listened to the Laurie Elizabeth Flynn one with The Girls Are All So Nice Here. I listened to the Alex Finley Night Shift one, but she also has Bonnie Kissler, who wrote The Cage. Have it, haven't read it yet. And a whole bunch of other authors. So she has 22 episodes, so manageable. Not that you have to listen to every podcast, obviously, or every episode from an author, podcaster. You guys know what I mean? And then another one that I have had a good time with is Book Reporter Talks To. So I went down a pretty good Taylor Jenkins Reid rabbit hole recently again as well. Like I kind of do this every once in a while because again, I feel like I just have some authors that are go-tos for me where I know I'm going to get great insight, great inspiration. And when it's books that I've already read by them, just better insight into the books. I love the backstory. I love the story behind the story. They're not always spoiler conversations, but I mean, basically, I will listen to / read anything Taylor Jenkins Reid does. She is my hero on 1,000 different levels, but there's some just really interesting ones on here too. There's one with Chris Pavoni, which I haven't listened to, which is on the newer side. There are, let me see, some other highlights of who is on this one. Jane Green, Jilly McMillan, Kimberly Bell. Like it's a lot of Lisa Scottolini, Bonnie Kissler again, Heather Gudenkauf. Like you'll see a lot of the same people sometimes coming out, like when their book comes out. Catherine Faulkner's on here, Nita Prose is on here. It just on and on. Allison Galen, like there's so many people I love. I'm not reading all of them. Lisa Unger, another one with tremendous writing advice. Lisa Jewell, who I'm completely obsessed with, who's also completely fascinating to listen to. I just mentioned Taylor. It just goes on and on. Lisa Gardner, who I've talked about already. Ashley Audrain is on here. It's just such fascinating conversation. And some of these are like an hour, over an hour long, which I'm like, just give me all the writing content. I am here for it. So that's another great one. And then sort of in a non-writery kind of a mode, I had mentioned in a previous, probably a while ago, that I had found this podcast called Podcasts Like It's 1999. And they talk about movies mostly that came out in 1999, but then they also were doing sort of a weekly deep dive of like Felicity episodes, The West Wing, Sex and the City. But they look at movies from 1999 and they talk about like what they thought of it then, how it holds up, does it hold up, what they think of it now, and sort of the impact that that movie may or may not have had, the actors, where they were then, where they are now, the directors, the writers, the social or pop culture impact that maybe that movie or TV show has had. So it's really interesting, and it's hosted by people who are in the industry, who are writers and producers, I want to say. I know one of the guys worked on Entourage, and the other one created, oh, I messed it up last time too, the Ichabod Crane TV show, Sleepy Hollow. So it's just really interesting. I just love all that. Again, the inside baseball of it all, I just very much enjoy it. So that one you could spend months trying to catch up with that one. But I definitely like picked and chose movies that I loved that I wanted to hear. It's very funny. It can be fairly inappropriate at times, but I just love the no holds barred nature of that one. So that's definitely a fun one. I have been listening to, although I am behind, on Drama Queens, which is Sophia Bush, Bethany Joy Lenz, and Hilary Burton, and they are doing a rewatch of One Tree Hill, episode by episode, and then commenting on the episode, and they are talking about their experience filming the show, how the show holds up, does it hold up, looking at the episodes with a critical eye, talking about the actors, and sort of sharing things that are going on in their lives today. They have actors from the show come on, and it's just such incredible nostalgia, which I absolutely love. I was, nobody's surprised, obsessed with One Tree Hill, still kind of am, and maybe had the DVD collection up to a certain point. People used to give it to me for my birthday. It's totally fine, not mad about it. But it's really, really interesting. If you have followed any of these women sort of currently, or anything about their stories, there was a lot of information that came out about the creator of One Tree Hill and what an inappropriate set that was run, the abuse that people were victim to on that show, and just really dark and messed up behind the scenes of what happened there. And listening to them talk about it now, talk about their experience on the show, and sort of the hindsight they have and the conversations they have around their experiences on the show, but also listening to them talk about their memories of it and having sense memory of certain scenes or looking back fondly in certain moments, and the impact that some of the actors on the show had on them. And it's just really fascinating to listen to, and I just love the camaraderie amongst the women and just the friendship amongst them. And it's just such a great show, but also like has such a, like I said, great nostalgia to it all. But I could listen to them talk all the live long day and have such a fun time with it. And then I was at one point like watching the episode and listening. I'm behind on both rewatching the episodes and listening to the podcast, but that's a great one. I just absolutely love it so much. And then more recently, a newer podcast is Sisterhood of the Uncomfortable Pants. And this is Catherine Manning, who has her own YouTube channel. I say it like it's nothing. She has like 460,000 subscribers or something. Like, she's gigantic. And I'm just trying to find the actual page of the podcast. Here we go. So Catherine Manning is a YouTuber. She started out as the content bug, and she was kind of giving like how to succeed on YouTube advice, and basically like exploded in the last 2 years. And her sister Patricia is on this podcast. This podcast has only been out for like 6 or 7 weeks, but they are talking about, it's basically like a self-help personal development in their individual journeys. So I want to say Patricia she's her older sister. She's maybe like 29, 30. And I want to say Catherine's like 27, 28. But they talk about, you know, Catherine talks about her success and talks about YouTube. Like, a lot of people know her from that. But she talks a lot about mental health and depression and dealing with getting divorced and sort of this meteoric rise to fame and what that can do to someone. Her sister talks about her marriage. She's a new mom. She has worked a corporate accounting job for most of her career. So very different perspectives from the two of them. And, you know, they talk about high school and college, and they talk about their family, and they talk about their relationships. And it's just been really interesting. And I think whether or not you follow Catherine, who I find to just be like fun to watch in a lot of ways and definitely educational in a lot of ways. Right now she's renovating a house, so all of her video content is mostly about this house renovation, which is insane to me. It's like incredible to watch, but I really enjoy this podcast. There's a lot of relatability to it. I appreciate the transparency of what they talk about. The whole like uncomfortable pants, like they'll call each other out on stuff. They will pose difficult questions. It's a real honest podcasts. Like there haven't been a lot of holds barred, and I feel like they're just getting started. So I really enjoy this one. Like I said, it's a new one recently out there, but I'm finding it very interesting to listen to. And then another one which I have dipped in and out of, but again, sort of looking for, I feel like I'm always like looking outside for help, but feeling overwhelmed, like struggling to manage time. I mentioned this in a different video. I am just sort of in this season of like everything is happening at once. I feel like I am treading water most days and I'm dropping all the balls. I'm having a hard time starting things. I'm having a hard time finishing things. I'm having a hard time focusing on things. I'm just having sort of like a general sense of overwhelm. So I was just, you know, looking for some podcasts to help. And the Better Together with Maria Menounos podcast has a few recent episodes, which I have completely locked into and am in the process of re-listening to. Nobody's surprised. She puts out a podcast basically every day, which is crazy. Maria Menounos is a superhero. I mean, I don't even know how she does all the things that she does, but she in particular has a 2-part podcast with Brendon Burchard. So the first one is about like how to improve your life, how to properly manage your mind. And then the second one, this is the one that caught my eye. I realized it was part 2, so I went back to part 1. How to get out of a funk, find motivation again, clearing mental clutter. And it's just very accessible. It's not preachy. It's not like too sciencey. It just feels like regular people having regular conversations. It is light and funny at moments. It is serious and heartfelt in moments. But there were so many great lines and things that I gleaned from this one. And this was the podcast where I told my friends after I listened to it, and I was like, here's some perspective for all of us. And I say this, you guys are sitting here watching me. But Brendon Burchard talked about how much time, like how people talk about like, I don't have time to do it, but when in fact we all waste time every day. And I feel like I know I waste time every day. But he gave this example of on average, the average person spends like 1 to 2 hours a day doing mindless scrolling. So not content creation, not commenting on people's videos or Instagrams or like putting up content. And the average person spends 2 to 4 hours a day of mindlessly watching TV. So not sitting down and deliberately watching a show or a movie, but it's on and you're there and you're kind of paying attention and you're kind of fiddling over here, probably doing the doom scroll. And if you even boil that down to the most basic 1 hour a day of mindlessly either social media-ing or TV watching, that equates to 45 8-hour workdays a year of wasted time. So if you spend 1 hour a day mindlessly social media-ing or TV watching, that's the equivalent of 45 8-hour workdays. So I was like, I need to listen to this podcast again because that was a bit of a core shaker listening to that. So this is why I love podcasts, because they bring so many new things into my life and put so many different things in perspective. And it's just insanity. It's just absolute insanity. And I'm sorry, I keep looking down, but I'm like scrolling podcasts to talk about other ones. Okay, so I feel like that's a good enough list to hopefully keep you guys busy, hopefully introduce you guys to something new that you haven't been listening to. But I'll keep you posted as I find new podcasts, let you know what else I'm listening to. Since this summer is chock full of books by authors that I love, I'm going to be thirstily looking for all the new interviews with the authors. So that tends to be when I find new podcasts. So stay tuned. I'll let you guys know as I find them. But I am also listening to author stories, writer's routine, it's taking me half a second, true crime obsessed, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby Owens. So I am still listening to some of my old favorite podcasts as well. I am always just trying to like consume all the things. So let me know, did I recommend a podcast that you guys absolutely love? Let me know what I missed, because as with me always looking for thriller recommendations, I'm also always looking for podcast recommendations. And as I was doing a little bit of a Google just now for Jennifer Hillier, I found a podcast. It's actually not still being made. It ended in 2021, which is a bit of a bummer. but it's called The Right Mindset with Raquel Henry. So she has a Jennifer Hillier one, which I'm going to listen to, but it also looks like some writer advice. So I haven't read it yet. Haven't listened to it yet because I literally found it while I'm sitting here talking to you guys. But there's another one that maybe will strike a chord with some folks looking for inspo or just some great writing conversation. So on that note, I'm gonna leave you guys. But let me know what you're listening to. Thank you for spending so much time with me today. I know it's been another rambly one, and I will see you guys in another video very soon. So take care, everybody. Bye.